Hello and welcome to the 60th episode of Inner Defense. Hi Abhishek, how are you?
Hi Dev, how are you doing? I'm
All
very
well, I
fine,
hope.
very well.
How's it going? How's life? Any summer vacation plans?
Yeah, in fact, as we record, that's why we are recording a little
A bit
earlier.
earlier, actually, yeah.
If there are references which seem a little
Dated.
a week old or something, when you listen to this a little later, forgive us for that.
Yeah.
Just to our listeners
Or
and
if
viewers.
we've missed a big news event that might happen
suddenly-
in the defense world.
Yeah, I mean, if something really, really big happens, then we might be doing that wherever I am.
Yeah,
That's a different thing.
That's, part
Yes.
of the job.
We have
I
done
guess.
that in the past.
We've done that in the past.
When
yeah.
I've been out or on leave.
Yeah.
We have. I think last year I was on vacation in Thailand and something happened.
Oh yes, I
And
remember.
we did
yeah. Oh, I
did a
remember. Yeah, you
podcast,
were sitting in the sea-facing room
Yes,
or something.
yes, yeah, correct.
And I was in the studio over here.
yeah,
and
that's
I
right.
was, like completely envious of you.
I mean, envious of you, but I mean, people should realize that there's no vacation for us journalists,
That is true.
isn't it? Before moving on a vacation,
Yeah.
you just keeping your fingers crossed that it can be an uneventful one. People go for eventful vacations. We pray for an uneventful vacation. Isn't it? People want to do things,
Yeah.
and we want our vacations.
Nothing
to
to happen,
yeah,
basically.
yeah.
And the phones to stay silent.
Yes,
Completely throughout
yes.
the trip. Yeah. All right. ठीक है. This week I want to talk to you about something I think you will be very interested in because I think over several episodes now you mentioned that you love history and it was one of your topics I think while graduating. You said,
Yeah,
right?
I did, honors in history.
Honors in history,
from
yeah.
Delhi University.
And it's also something that we've gotten some feedback. One of our listeners, I think a couple of weeks ago, had messaged saying that we should talk a bit more about the history of the army and its various regiments because almost any military in the world has a rich history.
Especially the Indian.
Especially the Indian Army.
Army, especially.
Army, yes.
specifically.
Of
Of course, the
Army.
Navy as well.
Navy as well, yeah.
Indian Air Force is a relatively newer.
But that's true for
service.
almost any air force in the world because
Yes,
the air force itself is technically quite.
Also because the British Air Force wasn't operating in India.
The Royal Air Force, yeah.
So our Air Force is completely indigenous.
Yeah.
No colonial baggage that way.
I was waiting for that word to come up at the
No
colonial.
baggage. And actually, if you go for Air Force events and even their messes, things like that, they feel very different from the Navy and the.
I haven't been, so I would not
They
know.
do feel.
Yeah.
They do feel Indian Sarkari type feeling at the.
What do you have to do, by the way, to get invited to an Air Force or any military mess event?
Sometimes there are press conferences and things like that. Or if you're traveling for some special story, you might go there for a meal if somebody invites you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the place where you are sort of entertained.
Yeah.
I mean, if they decide to play host, which they do. I mean, the Indian defense forces, I must say, are pretty hospitable. Yeah.
Another British legacy? Or it's
No, I
just
think that's a
Indian,
very Indian thing.
Indian thing, yeah.
I think very Indian thing.
Yeah.
No, I actually came across while I was in Ukraine. I came across a situation, and this was in the middle of battle. There was shelling happening, and I was at a frontline area near the Donbass region, and the Ukrainian forces, the Ukrainian army didn't allow us to leave without a meal. Simple food, of course, when you're at war.
Yeah.
But they said so. I tweeted that picture, me eating in a small bunker, and being served. So I said that very feels at home, even though I'm in Ukraine covering a war. Because when it comes to this, our military is also very similar.
Yeah.
They will not let you. I think it's a military culture that you don't go to war empty stomach.
Empty stomach, yeah.
Isn't it? So I think it comes from there.
Yeah.
That if somebody is come, you make sure that they get something to eat.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, so, let's talk a bit history. And, to our other listeners and viewers, if you also want to pitch in an idea, if there's anything that you want us to talk about, do let us know. Drop a text to us at 8588966996 or an email to us at pods@inyourday.com. That's pods@inyourday.com. Right. So I want to talk to you this week about the Gorkha regiment. And just like always, China is going to be part of this as well. And also the the Agniveer scheme that we
Yeah,
had
so many
discussed. So
things
many things,
coming
yeah.
together.
And also Nepal, by the way.
Yes.
That one country is always sandwiched between these two big powers of India and China. And historically, I think they've complained many times that, in your fights and your ego tussles, we seem to be the ones always getting the short end of the stick. And this topic especially has got something to do with that. So, for our listeners and viewers, if you don't know, and this is something not I think, like we even Abhishek and I were talking before, people who don't really closely follow defense, this is one aspect of the recent developments with respect to the Indian military that may have been missed. Is so the Indian Army has around, if my research is correct, has around 7 Gorkha regiments.
Bang on. Seven Gorkha regiments with the Indian Army, 4 with the British
Four with the
Army.
British Army. Obviously, the history goes back to the British Indian Army when they recruited Gorkhas from Nepal into the British Indian Army. After independence, 7 stayed back with the Indian Army and 4 went to the
No,
British Army.
at the time of independence, 6 stayed back with the Indian Army.
Okay, one was
Post-independent was
raised later, right?
11 Gorkha, I think,
Right.
is the one that has been raised post-independence.
Right. So what's happened apparently, there have been some reports about this. What's happened apparently is after the Indian government introduced the Agniveer scheme, which is like a 4-year short duty sort of a scheme for soldiers, non-officers. There's not been much recruitment happening from Nepal in the
Not
regiments.
much would be inaccurate.
Acha.
There has been no
No recruitment happening. The genesis of that apparently is an agreement between the Britain, India, and Nepal. And Nepal says that the terms of Agni, I won't go into the technicalities of it, but basically what Nepal is saying is ki we were supposed to be sending our soldiers to your armies, and they were supposed to be coming after retirement with their pensions in hand.
So that's because all of that, because of Agniveer might not be possible, and if a
Exactly.
soldier now goes and needs to come back after 4 years,
Then Nepal will have to figure out employment for
yes.
him and
so as a
his
country,
family.
for them it's not a military matter.
Yeah,
but
economic matter.
but a much bigger issue
Much bigger
because
issue.
the Indian Army is a big employer, has
Yeah.
been a big employer for young brave men from Nepal, and also looks after their families because pensions are being paid
Yes.
to those families.
Yes.
And again, just like in any other regiment, it becomes a tradition for young boys to follow the footsteps of their forefathers.
Yes.
So similar is the case there.
Yeah.
And so they're feeling that this is not the most opportune thing to have happened, and they're not very happy about it.
Yeah. And somehow China's involved. So China comes into the picture with this idea, and I think this is something that China has wanted for a while. They've also wanted to recruit Gorkhas into
Although
their
post 62 actually,
into
it's
their-
not
into
something
their
which is a new
army.
thing. They've been fascinated by the idea of Gorkhas being part of their army. Not just China. In 1947, even Pakistan claimed that some part of the Gorkhas should be with them, with their army. Although I don't think they really pressed their case because at that point of time, I think their priorities were different. But yes, there was a thought. I have read about it. But Nepal was very clear that they will not want to join the Pakistani army.
Yeah.
So they were not too keen either way.
Yeah.
So maybe that was the reason that the Pakistanis didn't press their case.
Yeah.
Didn't want to be embarrassed and red-faced,
Yeah.
being told that sorry, but no, thank you. We are happy here.
Yeah. Right. So China has been eyeing the Gorkhas of Nepal for a while, and now a new theory has developed. I'm not sure how much of it has actually happened on the diplomatic level between China and Nepal and India, etc. But there's a new theory doing the rounds that with the Gorkhas not going to the Indian Army because of the Agniveer embargo, China might kind of, become an alternative for the Gorkhas of Nepal. We'll come to that a bit later.
Let's just lighten up the moment
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
I shouldn't be answering this question because I know people from all regiments, so I will not answer which is my favorite Indian Army regiment. But you should at least give it a shot.
Good, I mean, come on. I was literally just going to go to that question and you just stopped me.
No, you should give a shot, and you should list your top 3, if not 5, and if you can just explain what's the fascination.
top three would be a bit much. I'll just tell you कि I've always been fascinated with the Gorkha regiment, always. Uh, since the time I've started reading up about Indian military, Indian army, when I was by trying to join
It's
the
over
NDA.
200 years old, by the way.
Yeah.
1815 is when it was raised.
Yeah, so fascinated by it, and I
But
think
there are older regiments than this also.
Acha.
So I think, if I'm not wrong, this saga started in 1750s, 1730s, 40s, 50s. So there are older regiments than the Gorkhas. If you thought that the Gorkhas are really old, they are very old. I mean, 200 plus years but there are regiments that were raised before the Gorkhas as well.
Right, but that to answer your question point blank, I would just it would be Gorkhas, because I don't know, just like the moment you ask a question like that, the image of the Gorkha regiment just pops up in my head.
So you think of like really fierce guys, really brave.
I want you to answer that because
what's the image that you have? Then I'll tell you what I've seen and what I've felt.
Well, their war cry comes to mind, by the way. Ayo Gorkhali, which means the Gorkha is coming. The Gorkha has come. Yeah, that comes to mind. And the image of a very fierce fighter comes to mind, who doesn't look like a fierce fighter, but fights very fiercely when he has to fight. Well, that's sort of the image that comes to mind.
I think you're on the right track. Sometimes I feel, how can these guys be soldiers?
Achha.
They look so pacific. Is the word. They are in peace.
Yeah.
And you would say that fighting and fierce warriors, I mean, extremely polite. I think Gorkha in the army, I could be wrong. This is just out of my experience of seeing different regiments, hearing stories from officers, people. I think they should be given the term of a sensitive warrior. Okay. Which nobody talks about.
Okay.
They are the most sensitive guys. और Gorkhas में गाली वाली नहीं चलती.
Achha.
An officer, if he uses a swear word or something, the soldiers will not rebel, but they take it to heart.
Achha.
गाली दे दी.
Wow.
So you are supposed to be very well mannered. There is, unlike in some other regiments where it's a norm. Nobody takes it to heart. It's fine.
Yeah, it's just
but
part and parcel.
They're very sensitive guys. Yeah.
Okay.
and that's just stands out about them. That we keep on hearing that they'll take out their cookery and do all sorts of things, but they speak very less. They'll only speak when spoken to. Don't ask many questions. And again, I mean, you'd be surprised why am I stressing on the word sensitive. They are. So that for me, that stands out.
Yeah.
That's why they are something. The Gorkhas get into that fascinating sort of bracket for me, because they are completely opposite to what the world thinks they would be.
Perhaps that's probably why this regiment is so talked about. I mean, the enigma of this regiment.
And even the officers, they think of themselves as the cream. The real
officers who've commanded.
The officers of the regiment. So they are also different. I mean, they feel that there's a term OG, olive green. This comes from the uniform. So it said that Gorkha officers are most OG, most olive green, as in they are most particular about their mess rules, about their protocols, etc.
They're as army as an army can get, basically. Just the disciplined, strict.
So that's the thing. So they are different.
Yeah. So this regiment has a storied history, which we'll talk about, and just that because you mentioned officers.
Sam Manekshaw.
Yeah. Sam Manekshaw, one of India's only two field marshals.
Yeah, and also the chief during the 1971 war.
And the first chief of defense staff of the Indian military, General Bipin Rawat, was also a Gorkha.
The current CDS.
Oh, I did not know that.
General Anil Chauhan is.
He's also Gorkha. Oh, I did not know that.
So, and the famous quote of Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw, that if somebody says that they are not scared, they are either lying or he's a Gorkha.
Oh, nice. Lovely.
Sam Manekshaw had a thing about giving these great quotable quotes.
Quotable quotes.
So he happened, I happen to be from his school. He doesn't happen to be from my school. So in the school, old school magazines, that I'm sure they're still there. I came across one of his quotes when he had come as a chief guest when he was the army chief. I think it was 1969 or 1970. So I had this, since I like history, I also used to, go to this room and look at old books, magazines of my school. Because my school also had a really, really old history, if I can say so. Over 150 years old. When I was in school, it was over 125 years old then. So I came across this quote in his speech to the students that I learned how to hate my enemy right here in Sherwood, thanks to St. Joseph's next door.
Oh.
So that was the neighborhood school in the neighborhood, the enemy school, the rivalry. So yeah, the guy had a, he had a way with coming up with these quotable quotes.
Yeah. Nice. Speaking of Field Marshal, Sam Manekshaw, just like a thought struck me, and this harks back to our previous episode. Last episode, we talked about uniforms, and we did mention how the Gorkha officers have a hat and not a peaked cap like most officers. General Bipin Rawat and General Dalbir Singh Suhag also
Again, General Suhag again.
So when I think of them, I can remember their photos wearing the tilted hats. But I can't remember a Sam Manekshaw picture where he's wearing a hat. I always remember of him wearing the normal cap. Can you think of why? Just thought of it because we discussed uniforms last week, so just suddenly came to my mind.
I don't know, man. Maybe
perhaps was it the time when the Indian Army had a common uniform for senior officers? Maybe, I don't know.
I don't think so.
Much.
I don't think so. The hat has been around for a while.
Well, so if any one from the army or the
that's a good one. Yeah.
Ministry of Defense is in the archive department.
Some military history geek.
Yeah, maybe if you can find out a photo. Because I can't think of a single. If I Google Sam Manekshaw, I'm pretty sure I won't find a photo of him in a tilted Gorkha hat. So let's see if someone comes up with something. Right. So, bang on first question that I wanted to ask you about Gorkhas, and I thought I'll always ask this to you whenever we talk this topic. What's the thing about them? Because what you just kind of said, India have accepted them. The British Army also wanted them. Pakistan was kind of eyeing them, and China has been eyeing them for a while.
Since 62. After the 62 war.
Yeah. So what is it about these Gorkhas that make them these fierce
to say
fighters?
That they are good fighters and all that would be a cliche. I will not get into all of that because, of course, there is... if one sees the history, but again, it would be unfair to other regiments. There have been gallantry awards.
Yes, exactly.
Even with other regiments. Yeah, but generally very disciplined lot. Extremely. I think discipline comes to them naturally.
Okay.
That way they stand out again. Maybe in other regiments it's instilled.
Yeah, trained. Basically,
yeah. But for them it's a very natural way of doing things. And again, the terrain that they come from. Natural sons of the soil. Mountainous terrain, jungles, forests. Again, natural fighters for those kind of places. So that's what I think makes them extremely wanted. And the British actually was, if you again get into the history, how did the Gorkhas get into the British Army?
Yes.
So it was during the Anglo-Nepal War.
Okay.
Where... it was there was some of the defectors who first from the Nepalese side got into the British forces. That wasn't a very formalized kind of a setup. They were more like a militia who started fighting for the British, and that's when the British realized that these guys are God gifted, natural, and that's when the Gorkha regiment was raised in 1815, and slowly, the number of regiments kept on increasing. You had several battles in pre-independent India, just about all. The Anglo-Maratha wars, you name it, they were part of action. And in the First World War, they were part of action. Second World War, they were part of action. And then post-independent India, once again, they've been there in almost all major conflicts that we have seen. So just to put their history in brief, that's how it started. And I mean, extremely proud lot, as I said. Officers also take a lot of pride in their men.
Are they what is generally referred to? Are they a warrior class in the typical definition of that term, which basically would mean like they just have a history of fighting for armies?
I mean, it's difficult to say. I mean, that I don't know. I mean, are Gorkhas a warrior class? I don't know. I don't know if to answer whether we can say yes or no. But yeah, they are naturally sort of built. I mean, they're not huge, but they're swift.
Okay.
They are very unlike a tall, broad Khalsa troop. So they have other capabilities. They might be short, but they'll be strong. Because of the terrains that they come from, they're good at running. Naturally, physically, athletic, kind of, and very, very agile and swift. So, I mean, yeah, those are natural capabilities that a soldier should have, and I think yes, they do tick those boxes.
So when you say that they're fierce fighters, is it just physical prowess, or is it also that they have their strategic bent of mind, which makes them adept?
See, I know nobody has a strategic bent of mind. I would say all that comes with training, and obviously that's what professional militaries do. They train you to be professionals and not to be fighters. There's a difference, isn't it? There'll be so many street fighters, but that's the difference. So, yes, they are natural athletes, which is a big plus for any army, and extremely disciplined, as I said. That's something that stands out. And again, I'm harping on it. Their sensitivity is, I think that's a potent weapon. Turns out to be a potent weapon for them, because that sensitivity is somewhere linked to their discipline. बुरा मान जाते हैं बहुत जल्दी ऐसे कैसे बोल दिया. So that बुरा मान जाना ना is then that triggers sort of the urge to get back at you, and not in a revengeful manner, but sort of justice.
Right.
So I think they think that way. I'm not a Gorkha officer. I'm not the right guy to be speaking on their behalf.
Yeah, but you must have definitely met
the kind of
several
vibes
them.
that I've got and the stories that I've heard.
Yeah. So have you been to Nepal?
I have.
So have you been able to relate what we were just discussing right now with the kind of the society over there, and explain, like, because you say that you since you love history and you love the military, so you obviously when you had gone there, you must have been thinking about what is it about this place that
I actually have a lot of friends in Nepal.
Achha.
Again, going back to my school days, there were a lot of guys who came from Nepal.
Oh, okay.
And they had a history, and there were 2-3 families. For them, it was a tradition.
Okay.
To send their kids to the school. So I've been to Nepal several times, and see, what you talk of Nepal as a nation and the army, the Gorkhas serving in the Indian army, it's not like that. If you speak to a normal Nepalese, they can be critical of India. So you don't think that everybody in Nepal is saying Bharat Mata Ki Jai.
Of course.
A lot of Indians have this.
Even several politicians have been quite critical of India.
Yeah, and all of those politicians, many of those politicians have studied here and things like that. But when they are Nepalese, so their interests come first. So the point that I'm trying to say is कि नेपाल जाओ तो ऐसा नहीं लगता होता है कि भारत माता की जय हो रहा होगा. It will not happen even if there is say a neighborhood where only Gorkha soldiers live. So this divided loyalty and allegiance is something that comes naturally to them, because not every Nepalese is joining the Indian army.
Of course.
The ones who are, again, have their allegiance, as I've said before, first to their Paltan and then to India.
Yes.
So their allegiance, yes, they are extremely respectful of India, thankful of India. Obviously, at the end of the day, India is their employer. They are salaried because of the government of India. They're getting pensions because of the government of India. So of course that gratitude and respect is there. But it's not that all of Nepal, sings praises of India. ऐसा नहीं है.
Right. And what about your interactions with these regiments, the Gorkha regiments? What's like the one or two memory that you still hold, and the moment I say it, that's the thing you recall. I had gone there and this had happened. Anything like that?
See, they're very extremely simple guys. And as I said that if something is not clear, they will not seek a clarification.
Acha.
I'll give you an example. My uncle was a Gorkha officer as well. So this is as a child. So he was commanding a brigade in Kasauli. So we were going somewhere. So somebody asked the person who was driving, Gorkha soldier, just a query. An officer asked that how far is this place from here? He didn't answer.
Okay.
After some time, this officer realized, there's a story that I heard. That, where are we going? He said, you asked how far is that place? So he was going in that direction. To the simple question, how far is this place?
He just started going there.
So they're very, very simple guys. Lovely guys. Lovely. And they don't look like soldiers. If they are not wearing a uniform, you will say this guy cannot be a soldier. But yeah, nothing. Don't go by this deception. They can be quite deadly. So if somebody thinks that they can sort of have their way with a Gorkha, it's not going to happen. In the film LOC, there is a scene where Manoj Pandey, PVC, Paramveer Chakra, posthumous, of course. He was a Gorkha officer again. So he comes with his paltan and he gives a brief to the people who his paltan is relieving. Ab Gorkha aa gaya, aapko tension lene ki zarurat nahi hai, something like that. So those kind of things are there with them.
Is this regiment as storied within the army as well? Because you briefly mentioned at the beginning.
No, all of them are. If you tell Rajref or a Sikh or a Sikhlai or a Maratha, any regiment that your history is less cool,
they'll get offended.
No, they won't get offended.
Achha.
They will counter it, saying that how is it less cool?
Right.
So I think that's more a civilian thing.
And that's what I was coming to.
Yeah, but as I said, the Gorkhas are more OG, more olive green, try to be more spick and span, most organized, most suave in their demeanor, which other regiments sometimes don't pay attention to those kind of things.
Maybe that's a British thing, maybe.
But again, the other regiments also
actually, yeah. So speaking of British, I mean, so
maybe it's again just thinking on their behalf. Maybe it's the fact that there are that this is the only regiment that's there with the Indian Army and the British Army. I think that could be one of the X factors, cool factors associated with them.
So talking about that, how in terms of the practicality of the situation, how is it decided? I mean, not decided, perhaps is the wrong word, but how does it work? Both the British and the Indian Army, and by the way, just the Nepalese Army as well, recruiting Gorkha. Is it like this from this particular region, the people go to the Indian Army and then the...
No, so again, I should clarify this. Not at least the Indian Army. It's not as if each and every Gorkha regiment has 100%, Gorkha recruits, Nepalese recruits. There are about 60 to 70 Nepalese recruits. The rest come from Uttarakhand, Kumaon and Garhwal. In fact, when the regiment was raised back in 1815, that was the idea. To have soldiers from the hills, which included present-day Uttarakhand and Nepal. So it was to have guys from the hills. That was the concept.
Right. Now let's we'll move to the reason I actually want to talk about this topic this week, but we'll do that after a quick break.
Although, yes, when we asked our officials here as to whether if there are confirmations, what happened, what's the reason, they all said, well, don't miss the wood for the trees, is what Harshringla, the G20 chief coordinator, said. Amitabh Kant said that only China, barring China, everyone else has attended, which was basically a spin because Turkey and Saudi Arabia officially have not
Not in India.
attended. They did send industry representatives, and the spin over here is that tourism
Did
is
Oman
about.
attend?
So
Oman.
Oman registered. It's also about registering. If you've registered, you've showed intent. But they are saying that last minute they could not attend. They're still trying to get a confirmation because there's another day to go. Whether if at a low level we have officers who are still present. But these are countries that are important, strategic partners of India. But they also have a responsibility and a role to play in the Islamic world. So that's why there was clarity there, which means that doesn't mean that ties between India and Saudi Arabia will get affected. But it also means that, Anna, when Amitabh Kant said, barring China, every other country is attended because there was private participation, you're somewhere diluting the truth. And that dilution of truth does not help in the longer run because in future, when they have to ask Saudi Arabia for something or Saudi Arabia asks India for something, they can't turn around and say, but you did not come to Kashmir. Because officially their position is that they did not come to Kashmir for other reasons, not because of Kashmir. That does not help. In terms of policy, I think it does not help at all. You be honest, you say, well, these are the countries who, despite and in spite of being a part of the OIC, attended and endorsed India. These did not. We understand it does not affect ties.
Yeah, and in fact, there are several reports who have actually mentioned that these are the countries, that have refused to attend. So it's already out there in the media. So why do you have to then dilute it?
Absolutely.
For an in-depth analysis of pressing world affairs and geopolitical developments, tune in to Geeta's World. Catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and other audio platforms.
Welcome back. Abhishek and I are talking about the Indian Army's Gorkha regiment, and now we'll move on to how we've spent the first half of this episode discussing the history of this regiment. Fascinating history, just like every other regiment of the Indian Army, and I think we should do this more often. By the way, every few episodes,
we should,
just pick one regiment.
Maybe we can get an officer from one of these
regiments and just talk about their history and everything. But the Gorkhas, as something we wanted to talk about this week, is because they relate very closely to one significant development with respect to the Indian military policy decision that was taken recently, and the ongoing China crisis at the border. That we've spent several episodes talking about. The policy decision being Agniveer. So before the break, we spoke about how because of the Agniveer scheme under which all three armed forces will be recruiting soldiers for a 4-year sort of a period, 25% of whom would be retained. The others would be gradually eased back to civilian life without any pensions. This is the part which Nepal has an issue with, because for Nepal it would mean accepting youngsters essentially who've spent 4 years in the military without any pension. To unka fir future kya hoga?
I mean, it's a serious issue.
Serious issue. It makes sense actually. To be fair, without I don't want to take sides, but to be fair, it's a serious issue. And so was this aspect ever considered during the Agniveer planning?
See, frankly, I don't think anybody ever thought that Nepal will have a problem.
Because I think this is what happened. It was like socha nahi hoga ki ye ho sakta hai, and
taking it for granted kind of a situation.
वो तो आ ही जाएंगे.
And I don't know if anything is happening to find a middle path and some kind of a resolution. Even now, in fact, a little while earlier, the army chief had said that if they are not going to join, then we'll have to divert the vacancies to other regiments. So does that mean if this doesn't stop, will the Gorkha regiment see the end of the day?
Yeah.
Or will you have people from various other regions joining the Gorkha
Gorkha regiment? Yeah.
So for that to happen, the numbers might drastically come down because, as I said earlier before the break, that it's not that 100% are Nepalese. It's about 65%. So 30, 35, 40% are still coming from within India. So the situation might not be as bad as it seems as far as recruitment to these regiments is concerned. And of course, there's a big Gorkha population in places like Sikkim and West Bengal.
Yes.
So you can always have, I'm sure they come from there as well.
Yes.
The bigger problem is, I think, this is turning into a bit of a diplomatic.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, that China is looking at this as an opportunity to play some games.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll give you a very interesting story. Much before the Agniveer scheme, I did a report in 2020 that the Chinese are actually conducting a study to find out what attracts Nepalese to join the Indian Army.
Oh, okay.
Just a study to completely scrutinize, get into their minds,
Their motivations.
and see. There's no doubt that China has been influencing Nepal a lot.
Yes. Yes.
And all this started when there was this border dispute that came to the forefront. Again, around 2020, Kailash Mansarovar, India made that road very close to the borders. Nepal had objected.
issue with.
Again, there were murmurs that somebody's pushing them to do it. The current dispensation in Nepal, once again, the Prime Minister of Nepal has made utterances saying that we'll get back the territory that has gone to India. We'll get it back. So there is a simmering, and there is a feeling that it's at the behest of China here and there. It's felt that the current Prime Minister, who's Prachand, is close to Nepal, China, and things like that.
And Nepal does have a very strong communist background, so that
yes, it does. And whenever a communist sort of government
is in power,
you will have these kind of things. And there has been a lot of Chinese influence. Again, about a decade back, I remember doing a report on how Chinese are starting community radio stations in Nepal. How they are distributing literature in Nepal linked to communism, Maoism. So China has been keeping an eye on Nepal. Yes, it does feel if they can widen their influence in Nepal, it will help them in a big way.
Yeah.
But having said that, it's not so easy because even though there might be some disputes here and there between India and Nepal, I think the history of the two countries, the culture, the religion, that overpowers several other political developments that happen.
Yeah, I mean, I for one can't see like a Gorkha soldier in the Chinese army for the simple reason that it would be a culture shock for them.
Yes.
Because they are culturally much more closer to India compared to China. And China having no history of having them in the first place. I mean, Indian army at least has a history. So even if there was a cultural difference, over the years, I'm guessing that must have been bridged. But with China, it would just be a culture. So what would the Chinese army even do? Apart from just irking India, by the way, which would be, and because you've said this several times on our episode, that China just loves to do this, loves to play mind games.
Yeah, so this could be one of the mind games. And as I said, that it's since 1962 that they have been eyeing Gorkhas to be part of the PLA, and it's never happened. And talking about culture, all regiments have a very strong cultural affiliation. The Gorkhas. Dussehra is a big thing in Nepal. As a festival. It's bigger than Diwali. So when Dussehra is celebrated and the run-up to Dussehra is actually Navratri, where most North Indian Hindus turn vegetarian.
For 9 days,
But there are parts of India, like Bengal, where totally the opposite
happens. Yes.
Similarly with Nepalese. They would rather consume more non-vegetarian. It's festivity and things like that. So a story actually that I can share right now, which is a very good one. I don't know if I've done that before on the podcast. So this was about the Gorkha regiment. because of the influx of the Indianization of the Gorkhas, there was an officer who was commanding once. He narrated the story to me when he was commanding his unit, a Gorkha unit. So this thing came up that during the Navratri time, let's go vegetarian. So the officer was in a fix that, how can this happen? Because if you allow it's playing with, tinkering with the culture
Of course.
And then again, there are Gorkha recruits, there are Indian recruits, unnecessarily,
Tension,
creating a rift, there's that. So he asked the JCO Sahab to, deal with the situation, that find out what's happening. So the JCO Sahab was a Nepalese Gorkha. So he said, yeah, this is an issue. So he said, let's how to deal with it. So he said, I'll manage. He got back to him. He said, it's been managed, but there is still some simmerings are still there. He said, Purohit Sahab se poocho.
Purohit Sahab is
the Pandit of the unit.
Okay.
So he said that, that's the North Indian Hindu thing. So there was confusion. So he found a solution. He said, okay, if they want to go vegetarian, then also no alcohol. He asked Purohit Sahab, is this a good solution to it?
Yeah.
He said, yeah. So this proposal was made and it was back to normal.
I'm guessing rejected you.
It was back to normal. They said it's okay. So these are the storytelling.
Exactly.
Now
I can't imagine this happening. In the Chinese army.
So this can't happen.
Of course. Yeah.
But and how just imagine the Gorkhas celebrating the Shera with the Chinese.
Yeah. Exactly.
They sacrifice a buffalo, by the way.
The Gorkhas do. I think you mentioned this previously once. Yeah.
So they sacrifice a buffalo on the Shera day. That's supposed to be the big thing, the big treat. So just imagine with the Chinese. I mean, they'll lose that identity.
Yeah. Also,
and I'm sure the Gorkhas won't be associated with an army folklore again. But I think folklore become the truth when there is no rejecting the fact.
Okay.
So they wouldn't want to be associated with an army which actually left their positions in a UN mission,
we
deserted their locations before. And in fact, the Indian army fought where the Chinese were supposed to fight. Also rescued them.
Yeah, especially
the kind of legacy that the Gorkhas have seen as soldiers, they wouldn't want to be associated in any manner with an army that has this sort of blemish.
Yes. also because you are, and this is, I think we keep not forgetting, but this keeps going missed when we talk about the location of China, is that population actually is in the far east. The majority of the country that borders India is actually just
that's
land. That's land. Empty land.
Minuscule part.
So there has historically, I'm guessing, not been much intermingling of the two populations. So there cannot be like a common culture that develop. Unlike with India, where the border is almost like, you can literally, as Indians with an Indian passport, you can just walk over there. So that's sort of a border.
Sometimes people say porous border. I say no, it's not
porous. Porous is the wrong one. Of course,
it's not porous. It's a free border.
Free border, open border. Exactly.
It's not porous. Porous is where there are restrictions.
Yeah.
But movement is happening illegally or something. There's no illegal movement there.
Yeah. In fact, I think if I'm not wrong, Nepal is one of the few countries where you can drive a car, your own car, without an international driving license. You can use your
and also, I think employment.
Employment, exactly.
Either way, there isn't any. We don't need special permits either of the citizens to be employed by at least a private company. I don't know what the rules in the government jobs are.
Yeah. Those I think might be different.
Might be different, but at least private jobs, schools, colleges, admissions. As I said, I've studied with a lot of Nepalese.
But of course, again, you cannot disregard the strategic importance of the country. And someone like you who appreciates maps, as we all know, would know that really well. And this is something that, has come up quite frequently of late. And this is again in line with the whole idea that I read about since I was in my early 20s, I think. China's designs to sort of circle India, the Ring of Fire, so-called Ring of Fire.
So Nepal comes in
Nepal,
the scheme of things.
Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka down south, and like kind of build these relationships with these countries to kind of circle it. Agniveer presents China with a good opportunity, actually, if you think about it. Because
at least the opportunity to play some kind of a disruptor.
Yeah, because
that disruption has happened.
Yeah, they can say that, when India did that to you, we were there to kind of,
So that disruption has happened. I don't know how it's being dealt with.
So that's my question over here. I don't think it's the Indian Army's job really to think about the nitty-gritties of, this diplomatic tussle between India, China, and Nepal. It would be the MEA. So my question to you then is, MEA would not have been consulted about Agniveer, I'm guessing, first of all, right? So this problem was never foreseen by anybody within the system.
No, I'm sure it wasn't foreseen. That's why we are facing the problem. And I'll differ with you a bit that it's not the Indian Army's problem. Military diplomacy is a very important aspect of today's geopolitics. And if the Indian Army thought that it's not their job, then I guess there was no far-sighted vision. Especially because in a scenario like this where they are the main stakeholder. MEA is not the stakeholder. It's the Indian Army which is the stakeholder. I will not hazard a guess here. I am not aware. First of all, I'll put it this way. I am not aware whether the Indian Army had taken it up or not.
Okay.
I'll leave it with that disclaimer.
Right.
It's possible that I'm not aware. I haven't heard of it.
Yeah.
I can't for sure with all certainty say that Indian Army had raised concerns about this.
Also because this issue hasn't really snowballed into public view as such, there's not really a lot of focus or looking into what exactly happened. Because my thought is that any officer up the chain of command who's ever, who knows about these things, the red flag would immediately go up that, introducing a scheme like this would probably mean Nepal would say this, which would probably mean there would be a vacancy, which would probably mean, China
so that's what I'm
step in.
saying. When the Agniveer was being talked, I did hear people say, well, what will happen with Gorkhas? So it's not that it completely, was off the radar.
Right.
So it's not that, isn't it? So that's why I said,
Interesting.
I will not hazard a guess by saying that we are not sure. Because I don't know of it. I mean, as a reporter, it's my failure, I would say. I've not been able to get my hands on it. Because if I get my hands on it, I think it'll be a big story.
Big story, actually. Yeah.
Isn't it?
Actually, yes. I think this is one of the bigger China episodes we've done because this is a missing element in our China discussions that we didn't address yet.
Yes. And anybody who thinks that the decision of Nepal not sending or taking such a strong stand, again, I mean no sort of ill will against the decision of Nepal. And I could be accused of what I'm going to say now. I could be accused of saying that Nepal is working under influence of China. But yeah, there is a very strong possibility, and in the Indian establishment, it's been felt that China is up to some games with what's happening in Nepal over the last few years, and it has actually coincided with Ladakh. So there's too much happening.
I would differ with you on that point, but I do have a counter to that. Is that on the face of it, if he's just talking about the current situation at hand, the episode in question about the Gorkhas, Nepal's position does logically make sense. I mean, economically, it's a big, what happens to the population once it comes back? How do you ensure the livelihood?
Forget Nepal. This was a concern with Indian people.
We discussed that, exactly. We discussed that at length. And, by the way, just to address that, several state governments announced schemes, once they come back from the army, we'll ensure their jobs in our, departments, etc.
So I don't know what the Nepalese government did.
Yeah.
To address that,
yeah. But I mean, Indian government should have played a role in that somewhere.
The Indian Army, again, at least the Indian Army should have mooted the idea, pitched the idea.
Solution आना चाहिए इसका. And second, to your point about China playing some games, China being involved. On that, my take really
conspiracy
is
theories.
Conspiracy theories. I mean, see, conspiracy theories. So you also have that Rahul Gandhi Kathmandu mein party karne gaya, and there was a Chinese spy standing right
No,
next
that is
to him.
nonsense.
That is nonsense.
That is not a
but
conspiracy theory. That is trash.
Yeah. But my point being, so if China is doing it, why can't India do?
Do what?
Be as aggressive. If China isn't, then China kind of beating India at the game. If China is able to convince Nepal
that's why it's a catch-22.
Yeah, so India should step up its game, right?
Actually, having this big Gorkha recruitment was not just a military sort of requirement and history and legacy that it was the biggest example of India's military diplomacy.
Yeah.
Biggest example. Which country allows, other than British, and even in Britain, the Gorkhas are there, but they are there more for legacy and things like that.
Tradition, legacy, etc.
Which country will allow another country's huge number of population to be serving in your army?
That to a neighboring country which neighbors one of your...
Yeah.
I mean, right now, the biggest rival. I wouldn't say one of your biggest rivals.
I think it was a greatest example of your military diplomacy.
Yeah,
which
and
has
also
taken
the
a
fact
jolt,
that
which has
the
taken
other
a big
country,
jolt.
the fact that the other country's population is willing to, because normally you join the army for your, like you said, of course, for your Paltan. Yeah. If you in the Indian army, you'd know that. But the idea being, you join the Indian army to serve your nation. But this is you're serving some other nation, but you're doing it out of...
Because there is so much history and tradition.
Yeah.
That you're doing it voluntarily, willingly. Yeah. You're not being forced. Yeah. There are no special attractions for people who join. It's exactly the same. The Gorkha regiment gets the same salary as any other regiment.
Yeah.
So there is pensions. Of course, it takes care of a lot of employment in Nepal. But that's all the more reason this thing shouldn't have happened. Yeah. That they say we were not going to say. So when I say, it's not the choice of Gorkhas. It's not a choice that those who are wanting to be recruited. I'm saying by their government stopping this. The question that also needs to be answered is the government of Nepal being a hurdle to their own people.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I think we'll leave that question hanging, and we'll leave several more questions hanging on this topic. I'll wait for people like you and your colleagues like Geeta Mohan, who also hosts a podcast on our podcast platform, to find out more about this, because like you said, diplomacy is involved, military is involved, and like you said, you're not really aware if there's anything even happening to kind of solve this. So Nepal has said that this is the issue, this is why
but a lot of clarity needs to come from the Nepalese side as well.
As well, of course, yeah, of course. So,
because why would you stop employment of your own people?
Yeah.
It's a very simple question.
Yeah. So I hope this gets a bit more attention in the coming days, and we'll wait for that. Before we go, but one last thought from you about, again, the Gorkha regiment. During the break, you were talking about how this is the only regiment that has several regiments in the army.
7 here and 4 outside.
Yeah. So you have the 1 Gorkha rifles, 3 Gorkha rifles, 4 Gorkha rifles, 5, 8, 9, 11. These are, and now you explained during the break how when you normally say, let's say 3 Gorkha rifles, normally that would mean the 3rd battalion of the Gorkha rifle regiment. But in this case, it actually just means a regiment.
It means the 3rd regiment. It's with 3-5.
Yeah. Then that would mean
the 3rd regiment, 5th battalion.
So
usually it is like which unit are you from? Somebody will say 4 Kumaon.
It's the 4th regiment.
4th battalion.
Sorry, 4th battalion of the Kumaon regiment. Yeah.
But in this it's confusing. 3-5.
Yeah. So you were saying that, you were telling that to me in the context of explaining how many Gorkha soldiers are there.
It's not just one regiment, they're separate regiments.
In the Indian army, which then
again shows that the recruitment is so high.
Which then begs the question I want to end this with. exactly how significant are they to the Indian Army, not just in terms of tradition, obviously tradition, but we've discussed an entire episode on that, but also strategically, because you said a few minutes ago that the army chief recently made a comment that, in case there are vacancies, we'll divert them to some other regiments, basically hinting at that, yeah, okay, fine. If it doesn't happen, recruitment, then perhaps the regiments might end.
But you
So,
can't force. The thing is that
you can't force a country
till
to, of course,
till
yeah.
the government doesn't
allow it.
lift
You can't
this,
force that, yeah.
we as a nation cannot
force someone,
So
of
what
course.
do you do with it then?
Yeah, you'll figure out a solution for it.
There will be vacancies. You will maybe fill in with, again, people from the hill states, which are already there.
I think most probably the most obvious solution probably would be that.
Maybe a lot of people of Nepalese origin who are Indians
India,
now.
yeah.
You'll try and sort of woo them, get them. So
Right.
those are the
So the point, the question,
options
the point of the question being, how big a loss then? Is it just a diplomatic loss then, or is it a bit more than that? Or
See,
is it,
in terms of numbers, they can be filled in. That's what I'm saying.
that's what you're saying, exactly.
It can happen.
Yeah.
The loss is more at the diplomatic level, the relations that you have, the legacy, history, all that will take a hit.
Right. But yeah, the diplomatic one is the one I'm interested in,
Yes,
because that will have a huge, significant impact. Though I really, in this case, like we discussed, I really doubt this question of ki China will open up its army for. I think that probably won't happen.
This is one of the
Theories doing the rounds.
It adds a completely different dimension, the China angle to all these discussions, and spices up our conversation every time we have something to do with China. And who would have thought that we would end up discussing a bit of China, discussing India, Nepal, Gorkhas.
Gorkhas, yeah. True that. And, for our listeners and viewers, again, let us know what you thought of this episode. We have fun when we discuss things like these. I just want to know if you also have fun. Do let us know. Drop a text to us at 8588-966-996 or an email to us at pods@innerray.com. That's pods@innerray.com. You can also drop us a rating for whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. Whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, etc. Thanks to our producer, Anna Priyadarshini, and our sound mixer, Kapil Dev Singh, and our video coordinator, Shakil Ahmed. That's it for this week's Defense Dose. For more, tune in next week. Till then, stay safe and do not cross any boundaries without a passport. Bye-bye.